Hetepu Namaste, this is Kasankma Keperu, here with another broadcast for you. And today I want to talk about how to astral travel. Astral travel, meaning go to different realms, or different dimensions. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that, the purpose of that, and basically, you know, what benefits you can gain from that. But before I go into all that detail, I was at a store and managed to come across this bobblehead here of Mace Windu. You can see that he's a Jedi Knight, and you know, I thought it was cute, so I said I got to pick this up because you know I consider us magicians, occultists, priests as Jedi Knights, and we know that George Lucas, the writer and director of the original Star Wars: A New Hope, was connected to the elite, and Star Wars is a grand metaphor for some believe the Illuminati taking over and instituting a new world order. But anyway, I digress. So let's talk about this. This is a really interesting subject. You know, I used to read a lot about astral traveling and lucid dreaming. You should also study that. And I would read about these occultists, and they were going to these different worlds and how really extraordinary and incredible these worlds were. And I was like, gee, I'd like to try that. And one night, without even trying, I guess, you know, I left my body and went to one of these different realms. And it was the most exciting and extraordinary experience I've ever had, you know. And no book or reading no pages can really give you the in-depth experience of it. It's something you're going to have to experience to really understand it and how wonderful this could be. Now, the idea that you have to keep in mind is that, you know, we don't live in what we consider is a physical reality. Our reality is subjective. And Nikola Tesla said it best, that we don't live on a planet or universe, we live in a realm. And we know from quantum mechanics that, you know, a subatomic particle can be either a particle or a wave. So what you have is reality really is nothing but waves, vibrations. And when you are vibrating at a certain frequency, you're tuning into a different realm. It's like turning a channel on a TV. There's a lot of channels you can go to, you know, now with cable and all that. Hundreds and hundreds of channels. It's all a matter of what frequency the electronics are set to tune you into a specific cable station. So same thing, the way your body works is that we know that electrons vibrate, we're vibrating, nothing is really solid. We are under the illusion that there's solidity, but it's not solid. So this vibration, depending on how it's vibrating, tunes it into a certain realm. And when you learn to control that through the process of either lucid dreaming or astral travel, you can go to these different realms where existing in these different realms are individuals, creatures, and they have their own laws governing these different realms. And if you want to understand how many they are and what creatures live in these realms, you can get a book by Franz Barton called The Practice of Magical Evocation, which he goes deep into that, and he talks about these realms and the beings that exist there. Now, one of the great things that you can do that could be beneficial is when you are astral traveling, you're going to these realms with not your physical body, not your spirit, but your etheric body. And when you go to these realms, you can encounter yourself, another version of yourself. And you can ask yourself questions. Like, say, for example, you go to a realm where you encounter yourself, and that version of you is very rich. You can ask that aspect of yourself or part of yourself, how did he or she accumulate that wealth? And then you can take the information back to this realm and use that and apply that to increase your finances. Other things you can do, for example, if you're having an argument with a friend, or mate or something like that, you can astral travel to a realm where their etheric body exists, and you can communicate with their etheric body to reconcile the dispute. And then when you come back to this realm, you'll find that that person now is amenable and friendly, cordial, and you guys can now continue on with your friendship. So it's really good for those things. Or if you are, like, for example, an inventor and you're having problems with something, and you can go to another realm, you can meet a famous inventor in another realm who will give you some guidance and wisdom that you can take back here and use it. Now, the one thing you have to keep in mind, because we have to set the ground rules, because, you know, God, one of the things that God, Source, Neteru laid down was Ma'at, the law, the rules of how things would work. So we often look at things from the left brain perspective, meaning we think that there is distance, we think that there is time. And there's no such thing when you're traveling in those inner planes and you go and you're using your etheric body. So you'll read books where it talks about, you know, try and project your body, you're moving through space, now go here and go there. Well, there is no here and there, because consciousness exists as the principle of non-locality. So you existed at all places at all times. So you are already there. It's a matter of shifting your focus. That's all there is to it. So you're not actually traveling, because there's nowhere to go, because you are everywhere, you know. So keep that in mind, that those books that talk about traveling or moving from one point to another are really just doing that to kind of facilitate the dialogue or facilitate the discussion, because that's impossibility that you would have to travel in that way. So keep that in mind, and so you understand that, again, we are not living on a physical planet or in a universe, but we are living in a particular realm that has a vibrational frequency that we have attuned to, and that is your default frequency, which is why you are here. If you want to visit those other realms, which there are many, and visit these different beings that exist and creatures that exist in these realms, you merely have to find the vibrational frequency that aligns with that realm, and a lot of it is done through mantras, through words of power. And using those mantras, reciting those mantras before you fall asleep, can take you to the lucid dreaming state, which is a state of when you're dreaming, but you can control the dream, and you are aware that you are dreaming and you are the dreamer. Astral traveling is not the same as lucid dreaming. It's not the same as a dream. It is very different, and the experience is very real, very enriched, and the beings and the individuals that you meet there are very real. Now you're going to say, well, are you sure it's not a dream? Are you sure it's real? Well, then you have to say, well, what is reality then? Because reality is subjective. There is no physical reality, you know, and your reality, again, is subjective. There is no objective reality that we all experience. All right, so that is a very important rule that you have to understand, and that these realms that exist are just as real as this fourth dimensional time-space continuum that we live in, because this is fourth density. So what we mean by that is it is dense matter, and as you move to these other realms, it becomes a more subtle form of matter, not as dense. All right, and each one, again, has its own rules and laws, Ma'at, as its foundation that you will have to obey in your etheric form. All right, so those are some of the advantages of astral traveling, because you can get a wealth of information, build a relationship and a bond between beings. And one of the things that you'll find that when you first start doing this is that you may only be able to go to these realms for maybe a minute or two, or maybe 5 minutes at most. But if you keep working, you keep doing it, you'll spend more and more time there. And sometimes you may not be able to get back to the same realm, but you'll go to a different realm. But the more you work at it, the more time that you'll spend there. You may only spend 5 minutes, and then after a year, you'll be able to spend at least an hour at these realms. And again, it's going to be a very, very wonderful experience. Now, there are ways to speed up the process. Many people will use ayahuasca or DMT, which will take them into really, really far out realms, you know. But you don't need those drugs because your body naturally produces a DMT. All right, so you can go these realms with the use of mantras or incense and things of that nature. Now, another thing that you need to understand about consciousness and who you really are is that we always think that we are alone, and you're actually never, ever alone, all right? For example, as I sit here and talk to you, my consciousness is observing me, and that consciousness of observing me can be is not subject to space and time. So it could be the consciousness that's observing me is observing me from the future or from the past. And this is why you're never alone, because you are not an individualized consciousness, but you are part of a collective consciousness that has different aspects to it, but still one and the same. So if I look back right now at my past, so say for example, I look back at last year and I role play and I go through what happened to me, a particular experience, I'm actually observing that. My consciousness is observing that, you know? And this is what's happening right now. It could be that I'm in the future observing this moment in my past. So you're never alone. Consciousness is always with you. It is always observing you, because you know how this is true, because we know that reality does not exist apart from the observer. For me to be here speaking with you, consciousness or something has to be observing me, because without that observation of consciousness, I would not be here, I would not exist. So lo and behold, something is observing you, which is why you're here. So those are some ideas of the benefits of astral travel. And one of the things I talk about is communion with the ancestors and understanding your history and your past, no matter what that past may be. You know, if your family was in the Holocaust or your family was part of a transatlantic slave trade, you can go back and experience those things, because again, all things exist simultaneously. So there is no past and future. It all is one now moment. And Ma'at talks about this. And so does physics. So, you know, you can go back and experience what it was like to be an indentured slave. You can go back to experience what it was like to be in a concentration camp, because those situations and those scenarios are existing and going on right now. It's a matter of shifting your focus to go and experience, or I should say re-experience those things. So I speak a lot to African Americans, and I say, you know, we don't have to read about slavery to understand what it was like to be a slave and what our ancestors went through. We can merely go into a trance state and travel and commune with our ancestors and gain wisdom and knowledge and bring that back here and write about it as if you actually went through the experience. And this is a lot what very good writers in Hollywood do, because when they write things that are so authentic, like Quentin Tarantino, you wonder, well, how do they know this? It just seems so real, as if they lived this life, and they didn't. It's because on some level they were able to travel to that realm in that period of time and gain that wisdom to Huti, and bring that back to put that onto pen to paper. So that's another benefit that you can gain, is first-hand experience. Instead of reading about something, go back and re-experience it and bring that knowledge and wisdom to the present day to help enrich people's lives. So those are some of the things that you can do. And then there's a lot of advanced level stuff, which is like bringing back a being. You can bring back an entity or a being to this present time, and work with that being and have them do favors for you, or send them on missions. And Franz Barden, in his book, The Practice of Magical Evocation, goes through the whole process and tells you how to do that. There are some dangers of doing that, so you have to be very, very careful. And you know, you have to set the environment and conditions have to be similar to where that entity has come from. So it's not going to come from around where the laws of gravity and laws of everything are so totally different. It won't come from that realm to this realm if the environment is not the same. All right. So that's just some information there. Well, that's all I wanted to talk about in terms of astral travel. I encourage you to explore this more because there's so much knowledge that we can gain. And just be careful because there are people I know who got into this and enjoyed it and just got addicted to where they don't want to deal with reality. They rather just go into their different realms and they become a trance junkie, you know, astral traveling here and there. But you eventually have to come back and deal with the reality of this fourth dimensional space-time continuum, because you're here for a reason, and that is to help solve problems that are going on, which is, you know, Netter wants to experience and grow from the experience and help others to grow, and that's what you're here for. So don't get caught up and addicted to something and forget your true mission in life and why you were put here in that pre-life agreement. So if you like this video, subscribe to my channel and hit the like button. This is Kassav Ma Keperu, and that's all for now. I'm in Ra.